Hey, useless wife, is dinner ready yet? It's always late, right, Mom?
That's right, just like Ken said. Amy, you're really such a worthless, slow good for nothing.
With all due respect, you're dumping all the farm work on me and leaving Dad's care entirely up to me too, aren't you? How about you cook your own meals for once?
Right after I spoke, both Ken, my husband, and mother-in-law's faces turned demonic. Their veins were bulging so much I could almost hear them popping. It seems like they're furious because it's the first time I've ever talked back.
How dare you take that tone with your husband? After all the effort we've put into teaching you, it's your fault you can't do anything right. If you can't obey, then get out.
This is a problem, Amy. If Ken throws you out, you won't survive, will you? If you hate it, why don't you apologize right now? Got it? You only get one chance.
I'm sick of hearing their usual abusive words. However, it's going to end today.
You said obey or leave. Fine. I'm more than happy to leave. I'll be moving out right now.
For a moment, Ken and my mother-in-law were stunned into silence. However, they quickly burst out laughing. They have no idea what's coming. Even though I already knew everything. I smirked to myself as I fiddled with my phone. That was the beginning of my revenge. A few seconds after I used my phone, the doorbell of the in-laws' house rang.
Oh, I'll get it.
I told Ken and my mother-in-law as I started to head toward the door, but my mother-in-law opened it first. Standing there was an older man neither of them knew.
Who are you?
Amy, everything's ready.
Ignoring my mother-in-law's question, the older man looked at me and smiled warmly as he spoke.
Thank you. Let's go. I don't have much to take with me, so I can leave right away.
Understood.
I said that and started to leave the house with him.
Hey, Amy, wait a minute. Who is this old guy? Are you really going with this frail old man?
Amy, you're really a troubled girl. Following someone like that just because you have nowhere else to go.
They didn't even know who this older man was, but they immediately belittled him based on his appearance.
Just as Amy mentioned, you two really have no class, do you?
It can't be helped. They shove everything on me and do nothing themselves. They probably can't feel good about themselves unless they put someone else down.
Unbelievable. I'm speechless.
The older man put his hands on his hips and let out a deep sigh. I could only give a wry smile at the sight.
By the way, I've heard you've been abusing your wife and daughter-in-law. Is that true?
He narrowed his eyes and brought up the topic of abuse from Ken and my mother-in-law to me.
What? We haven't done anything like that. That's ridiculous. Amy married into this family, so it's only natural for her to do the housework, right? This is all part of educating her to be a good wife in a farming family, right, Mom?
Exactly. We've done everything by ourselves until now. But since Amy married in, she needs to do her part. As Ken said, we're just educating her. It's not mistreatment.
Education, you say.
I wanted to scream that there was nothing educational about their behavior, but I decided to hold back at the moment.
Yeah, that's right. It's education. A few years ago, my dad secured a contract with a major food company, so we're busy. We need all the help we can get, so Amy's been helping out.
Indeed. Right before Ken married Amy, his dad collapsed. So now is a critical time for us. That's why Amy, as the wife, has to step up more than anyone.
Oh, so it's when in Rome, do as the Romans do, is it?
That's right, old man. Amy's gotta work hard for my dad's sake, too.
Exactly. If Amy doesn't do it, who will?
I understood that since I married into the family, I had to help out. I was prepared for that. However, that was only under the assumption that we'd work together as a family. They justified abuse as education and worked me like a slave. Still, I endured it until now. I did it because my father-in-law worked so hard to overcome financial difficulties and secured the contract with that major food company. I wasn't working for Ken or my mother-in-law. I was doing it for my father-in-law's efforts and expectations.
While it's admirable to work hard to uphold a contract, it's unacceptable to dump everything on Amy.
What the hell, old man? Are you saying we haven't been doing our part?
Ken raised his voice at the older man's words, and my mother-in-law snapped.
It's none of your business.
None of his business, huh? Even though they didn't know anything, they had the nerve to act so tough. I decided it was time to reveal who the older man really was.
Oh, by the way, I forgot to introduce him. This is Ed, my father's secretary.
Nice to meet you. I've served as Amy's father's secretary for many years. I apologize for the delayed introduction.
You've been treating Amy with certain respect this whole time, and now you're saying this old man is a secretary? Don't make me laugh. Are you trying to say you're rich or something? Do you really think my mom and I are gonna believe that?
Certainly. Do you know how long you've been married to Ken? It's crazy to try and pull something like this now. Such a ridiculous lie.
Ken and my mother-in-law laughed mockingly, holding their stomachs as if they couldn't believe what we were saying.
You don't have to believe me. Ed, let's go.
Yes, Amy.
I felt there was nothing more to say, so I headed outside with Ed.
Hey, wait. We're not done talking yet.
That's right. Wait.
Ken and my mother-in-law followed us and opened the door to go outside. The moment they did, they were stunned.
Why is there a luxury car parked in front of our house? And it's not just any luxury car. It's an ultra-luxury car.
They shouted in disbelief as they stared at the car parked in front of the house. Ignoring their wide-eyed expressions, Ed and I started getting into the car.
Wait a minute. Amy, what's going on? Explain this. What's with the ultra-luxury car?
Oh, this? It belongs to my father. Right, Ed?
Yes, that's correct. It is your father's car. The CO's car, to be precise.
Ed matched my explanation smoothly. My mother-in-law was left speechless, unable to find the words.
That must be a lie. When I met your father at the wedding, he said he was just an ordinary office worker.
My father was hiding his identity. I'll explain why now.
I decided to reveal the truth I had been keeping from Ken and my mother-in-law. The truth is, my father had been divorced. The reason for the divorce was that his ex-wife had been after his inheritance. At the time, despite being wealthy, he fell for her because he believed she loved him for who he was, not for his money. They overcame many obstacles to get married. Even though he led a busy life, he loved and cherished his ex-wife. But one day, her affair came to light, and at the same time, it was revealed she had been squandering his money. When my father confronted her, she admitted that she didn't love him but married him only for his money. Devastated by this, he decided to hide his identity to avoid people who were only after his wealth. He realized that if people knew he was a CEO, they would only suck up to him. That's why he told me to live my life without revealing that I was the CEO's daughter, so I wouldn't experience the same pain he did.
That's a lie. I'm not going to believe it.
Even if you say that now, we don't believe you. Amy, are you so desperate to save your position that you're resorting to such ridiculous lies? Aren't you ashamed?
I told Ken and my mother-in-law the truth, but neither of them seemed inclined to believe me. It wasn't that they didn't believe, but rather that they didn't want to believe. Well, I wasn't going to force them to believe me. I was just stating the facts. Whether they believed it or not wasn't my concern. Although in order to make them understand their position, I needed to force them to accept it. I glanced at Ed, and he smiled warmly.
If you don't believe Amy's story, perhaps this will change your mind.
With that, Ed pulled out his business card and handed it to Ken. Ken took the card and was once again shocked.
Harrison Foods?
He yelled out in surprise without caring who heard. Since he was yelling so loudly, I wished he wouldn't disturb the neighbors.
What? Let me see that.
As he shouted, my mother-in-law hurriedly checked the business card. Seeing the name Harrison Foods printed on it, she was shocked.
No way. Can this be real?
Harrison Foods is a major food company, which means my father is the CEO of Harrison Foods. Additionally, the company is one of the most important business partners of the family farm Ken and my mother-in-law are currently running. I had heard from my father-in-law that before they started working with Harrison Foods, the family farm was facing a serious financial crisis. Around that time, my father met my father-in-law and initiated the contract with Harrison Foods, which helped the farm recover. It was thanks to my father-in-law's efforts, while he was still in good health, that the family was able to secure the deal with Harrison Foods. Even though Ken and my mother-in-law were saved by my father-in-law's hard work, they were abusing me without knowing that I was the CEO's daughter. Well, they had left all the contract negotiations to my father-in-law, even before I arrived, so it's no surprise they didn't know. As I explained all of this, they finally seemed to understand their position. Their faces turned pale.
Oh, that reminds me, I almost forgot something important.
Ed, acting as if he had just remembered, delivered a message from my father to Ken and my mother-in-law.
The CEO's message is, the contract will be voided, and you will take responsibility for hurting my daughter.
Wait, please, don't cancel the contract. We'll apologize.
We're really sorry. If the contract gets canceled now, we'll be in financial trouble again.
However, you did hurt Amy. I believe it's only fair that you take responsibility.
But we didn't know Amy was the CEO's daughter.
That's right. If you'd told us from the start, we wouldn't have forced her to work like that. Please, sir, we truly didn't know. Can't you forgive us?
Realizing their situation, Ken and my mother-in-law suddenly changed their attitude, pleading with Ed to smooth things over with my father.
Do you even realize what you two are saying?
Ed was furious at their behavior. His sudden outburst startled me, and even Ken and my mother-in-law let out small screams.
First of all, you're apologizing to the wrong person. You should be apologizing to Amy, not me. Isn't she part of your family? It shouldn't matter who she is. Just because she married into your family doesn't mean you can treat her like this. Or are you saying it's acceptable because it's education?
No, that's not what we meant.
If you understand, then apologize to Amy first. After that, I'll pass along your message to the CEO.
Neither Ken nor my mother-in-law could argue with Ed's words. The only option left for them was to admit their wrongdoing and apologize. However, I doubted they would comply so easily.
Why should I have to apologize to her? It's her fault for being so slow in the first place.
Exactly. We were just trying to help her improve. If anything, she should be thanking us, not expecting an apology.
As I expected, they refused to apologize and instead argued back. Even after everything that was said, they still had the nerve to defend themselves, leaving me more exasperated than angry.
Mom's right. We did nothing wrong. If anything, Amy is at fault for hiding who she really was.
Excuse me?
Ken suddenly shifted the blame onto me. I was really irritated by his words.
Isn't that right? Normally, you're supposed to tell your spouse about your background before getting married.
Oh? Then didn't you also hide your background? You only told me after we got married that you came from a farming family, didn't you?
I quickly countered my husband's remark. He took a step back, seemingly overwhelmed by my response. The truth was, he hid the fact that his family was running a farm before we got married. After the wedding, he revealed,
I want you to help with the farm work.
before we got married, he never told me what his family did, constantly dodging my questions and never being honest. Well, I had hidden my own background from him at the time too, so I figured we were even. Even though he told me after the fact, I decided I would support him from then on, so I agreed to help with the farm work. However, once I started living with my in-laws and working on the farm, Ken quickly changed. Despite my proper handling of tasks, he began to criticize me as being worthless and slow. My mother-in-law was no different. Before the wedding and even for a short while after we started living together, she had been kind. Yet, that kindness turned out to be a facade, and within a month of living together, she started to treat me poorly, mirroring the behavior of Ken. They pushed all the housework and farm work onto me, saying it was only natural since I had married into the family. At this point, my father-in-law was already sick and needed care. Despite this, Ken and my mother-in-law forced not only the farm work but also the responsibility of caring for my father-in-law onto me, and that's how we ended up where we are today.
There's something I haven't told you, Ken. About 6 months after we got married, I was already considering divorcing you,
What?
but I held back. Do you know why?
How would I know something like that?
Of course, you wouldn't. One reason was because of your father's care. The other was that I wanted to grow as a person through farm work.
I had never accomplished anything by my own strength before. That's why, no matter what Ken or my mother-in-law said to me, I endured the housework and farm work. The only person I confided in was my father-in-law, who always supported me. I was grateful for his encouragement, and part of the reason I hesitated to divorce was because I didn't want to leave him behind.
But something happened that gave me the final push to decide to divorce you.
A push?
Yes, that's right. You and your mother gave me the reason I needed to leave.
Ken and my mother-in-law looked confused, as if they had no idea what I was talking about. I decided it was time to expose the truth to them.
Shall I let you hear it?
I said this and played the audio recording. In the recording, Ken and my mother-in-law were having a conversation, laughing and saying that everything is going according to plan.
Give that to me.
As the recording played, Ken lunged at me, but I dodged him just in time. At that moment, Ed stepped in and restrained him. My mother-in-law stood frozen, unable to move. In the recording, they started talking about the details of their plan.
Marrying Amy was the best decision ever.
Ken, you did great. Now we can make that wife do all the farm work and take care of your father.
This will make things easier for you, Mom, right?
Yes, thank you, honey. Now, let's make sure this plan doesn't get exposed.
Yeah, exactly.
As the disgusting conversation continued to play, I glared at both of them. In order to carry out their plan, Ken had deliberately targeted a woman who seemed obedient. As a result, he ended up marrying me. During their conversation, they even went so far as to call my father-in-law a burden, despite the fact that he had worked tirelessly to save the family from financial ruin.
So, how about it? This was the reason I decided to divorce you.
I stopped the audio recording and smiled as I delivered my words to them. They were completely shocked and dumbfounded.
Amy, were you spying on our conversations?
How could you go so far? You're such a sneaky wife.
They were furious at me for recording their conversation, but they clearly didn't understand the situation. I sighed in disbelief and explained the truth.
Actually, I wasn't the one who set up the recorder. It was Dad.
What? That's impossible.
There's no way my dad would do something like that.
They were stunned to learn that my father-in-law had been the one who planted the recording device. And it made sense, they had been abusing me in secret, thinking my father-in-law was unaware. I remained silent, not wishing to cause concern for my father-in-law, yet he had observed the events and was keeping an eye on them. Though my father-in-law required some care, he was still able to move around independently within the house. Fortunately, while everyone else was working outside, he was often the only one inside the house. As a result, he successfully managed to record Ken and my mother-in-law's conversations. They had assumed my father-in-law was too ill to notice anything, so they were completely off guard. Now, realizing their actions had been exposed, they began to panic.
This is bad, really bad. What do we do, Mom?
What do you mean? What do we do? It's already out in the open.
That's right. Unfortunately, we know everything.
My father-in-law had understood my feelings and quietly encouraged me to pursue divorce. He had assured me not to worry about him and to leave Ken and my mother-in-law behind. He even supported the decision to nullify the contract with Harrison Foods, the very contract he had worked so hard to secure. Thanks to him, I finally had the resolve to end this marriage.
What I can't forgive more than anything is not how you treated me, but how you neglected your own father.
Huh, what are you talking about?
Don't act like you know anything.
I'll say it again. Dad got sick because he worked tirelessly to save this family from financial collapse. It's thanks to him that you were able to secure the contract with Harrison Foods.
Even though Ken and my mother-in-law knew how hard my father-in-law had worked, they had dumped all the responsibility of his care on me without a shred of gratitude.
Despite everything he did for this family, you couldn't even show him the slightest bit of appreciation. I can't forgive that.
I rarely raised my voice, but at that moment, I shouted in anger. Whether it was due to my outburst or their realization of the entire truth, they became silent. Seeing them remain speechless, I decided it was time to lay down my terms.
I have 3 demands. First, you will offer a sincere apology to your father. I'll confirm with him later, so make sure it's genuine.
Okay, I understand.
I promise.
Good. Second, we will proceed with the divorce through a lawyer. Simply put, I no longer want to see your face. Is that clear?
Yes, I understand.
Thank you. Now, the final demand. I will be requesting compensation for the emotional distress you've caused me. You both understand what that means, right?
Yes, I do.
So do I.
Seeing them both hanging their heads in defeat, I nodded in satisfaction.
Good. Then that will be all.
I made sure they understood they had to fulfill my 3 demands. With that, I got into the ultra-luxury car with Ed and left the house for good. 1 month after I left my in-laws' house, I received a flood of emails from Ken and my mother-in-law. They both said the same thing.
We need to talk.
I figured I might as well, so I set the time and place.
Amy, how do you plan to handle this?
Well, Ed, do we have everything prepared?
Yes, everything is in order.
Thank you. It's time to finish this once and for all.
Please take care.
On the day of the meeting, I received an envelope from Ed and headed to the agreed-upon location. When I arrived, I saw that Ken and my mother-in-law were already there. They were dressed rather shabbily, but I chose to ignore it.
So, what is it you wanted to talk about? I would have preferred if we had communicated through our lawyers.
I made sure to speak clearly and firmly so they wouldn't try to undermine me.
Actually, we need more time to pay the compensation.
After everything, the contract with Harrison Foods really was canceled. And now, just like before, we're back in financial trouble.
My mother-in-law was begging for mercy. It seemed that after the contract was voided, Ken tried to step up as his father had, but nothing worked out. They couldn't find any new business partners, and they didn't have the money to pay me the compensation.
Well, Ken can just take out a loan or do whatever it takes to pay it. This is compensation. I'm not letting you off the hook.
Why should I have to go into debt?
Ken retorted, so I handed him the envelope Ed had given me.
What? What is this?
If you take a look inside, you'll understand. Mom, you're welcome to look as well.
My mother-in-law peeked into the envelope with Ken. Suddenly, she shouted.
Ken, what is this?
Calmly, I said.
Please lower your voice. You're disturbing others.
She shrank back, and Ken stood there in shock, unable to speak. Of course, the envelope contained proof of his affair, photos of him with another woman.
How did you get these, Amy?
You didn't think I wouldn't notice, did you? It was obvious from your behavior that you were cheating.
It wasn't just about Ken dumping all the farm work and caregiving on me for his own convenience. He did it to create free time for his affair. Around the same time I had decided to divorce him, he had begun acting suspiciously. I started gathering evidence when I realized something was off.
When did you figure it out?
Well, you kept making excuses to skip farm work and started paying more attention to your appearance. It wasn't hard to figure out.
Ken, is this true? There's no way what she's saying is real.
Mother, these are all genuine. I asked Ed to help me hire a private investigator.
How could you do something so underhanded?
Call it whatever you want. The emotional distress compensation I mentioned a month ago also includes damages for your infidelity.
What? No, that can't be true.
It's true. And by the way, I've already met with your mistress. She admitted to the affair, but she didn't know you were married. She was shocked to find out you lied about being single.
What? You met her?
Of course. Since you were cheating, I'm claiming damages from her as well. After explaining your relationship, she agreed to pay compensation and promised to cut all contact with you.
At that, Ken hung his head, realizing there was no way out. It was clear there was nothing he could say to defend himself.
Do you find it satisfying to ruin us like this?
Not at all. I'm just giving back what you've done to me.
But we apologized. Why are you still trying to corner us? Haven't we suffered enough?
Do you really think you're the one who gets to say that?
In response to my mother-in-law's words, my voice came out colder and lower than I expected, sending a chill down her spine. She let out a small scream and started trembling.
How much did you exploit me? You shoved all the housework, farm work, and even your husband's care onto me, didn't you? You did nothing yourself, and whenever I took even the slightest break, you scolded me and forced me to keep working. Don't act like you've forgotten.
That was for your own future. I was just teaching you what you'd need to do.
Well then, how about I go around and ask the neighbors? I'll say, my mother-in-law forces all the work on her daughter-in-law and does nothing herself. What do you think about that?
What? Please, don't do that. If you say that, my reputation will be ruined.
It's too late for that. Your reputation has already been damaged since I left the house. I'm sure many of the neighbors saw what happened that day.
At that, her face turned pale and she hung her head, clearly realizing the truth in my words. Then, as if sharing a silent understanding, Ken and my mother-in-law glanced at each other and suddenly began pleading and crying.
Amy, I'm so sorry. Look at us, we're begging you.
I'm truly sorry. I just wanted to help secure our future. Can't you forgive us?
I'll say it again, I will never forgive you for what you did. I won't even try. So, take out loans or do whatever you need to pay the compensation. That's all I ask.
I declared this mercilessly, left money for my own meal on the table, and walked out. Later, through my lawyer, my divorce was finalized. As for the compensation, Ken took out a loan and paid me in full. However, the debt plunged him and my former mother-in-law into deeper financial trouble, and both their mental and physical health deteriorated. I don't feel sorry for them. They're just reaping what they sowed. As for my father-in-law, he is now living in a care facility, away from Ken and my mother-in-law. I was the one who suggested the facility. Judging by how things were going with them, I worried they would neglect my father-in-law again. I couldn't bear to see him suffer any longer, so I strongly encouraged him to enter the facility. Reaching his limit, my father-in-law consented to the situation.
How are you doing, Dad?
Oh, I'm doing well. But Amy, I'm so sorry. If I had been able to move around more, neither my son nor my wife would have acted that way. It's all because of my condition.
He apologized sincerely, but I shook my head.
You don't need to apologize, Dad. I was planning to divorce Ken sooner or later. It just happened to be now. Besides, you were always supporting me, and I'm really grateful for that. Actually, I've decided to work in a company in the food industry.
He was overjoyed as if it was his own success.
I want you to live for yourself.
With those words, I knew I would carry on the lessons he taught me and work hard. For both of our sake, I was ready to take the first step into my new life.